Hey everybody, Rex here. Okay, what I want to do in this video is I want to give you some troubleshooting tips if you're having trouble doing an image transfer using transfer paper. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover in this video right after this intro. Alright, well, welcome back. Okay, this is going to be somewhat of a quick video. There are times where, if you're new to transferring with transfer paper or just transferring with just regular paper, then this video is for you because I'm going to explain some of the things that can happen when you're doing transfers. But before I do that, it's very important that I give you some basic logical information in relation to transferring. Now, I want you all to think carefully about this. Let's just assume for a moment that this is just regular, everyday printer paper. You stick it in your printer, you print something on it, then you go and you grab yourself some glue. I don't care what glue it is, as long as it's a glue. You put the glue down, you put your paper down, you flatten it really good, you let it dry completely, and then what do you expect to happen next? Are you going to be able to pull that paper off the wood? No, not if it was glued properly. You know for a fact that if you tear the paper off, it's going to leave paper glued onto the surface. That is no different than transfer paper. If you glue transfer paper using gel medium or any kind of really strong glue, if you glue this paper onto a surface and it's completely dry, you are not going to remove this paper from the surface. If while using transfer paper, you glue it onto your surface, then it's completely dry, and with this paper we moisten it, because that's what's different between this paper and regular paper, is that we can actually moisten it and then separate the paper from the image itself. Okay, because of what the image is printed on, it gets activated, leaving the image behind because the image is glued, but the paper itself is not glued. Okay, take a look at this image for a minute. Here we have the substrate, that's the wood or whatever the surface is that you're going to put the image on. Then you have your glue or your gel medium that you're going to have right on top of that. Okay, now right above you see that there's the transfer paper itself. That's the very top layer that you see there. There's an invisible coating that's on the paper, and then you print on that invisible layer. Well, when you glue that paper onto that wood, for example, you notice that the glue is directly on the laser printed image and the wood. Those are the two things being glued together. Once that is dried, there should be no way that you could pull that paper away from that laser printed image if it is in fact glued to the surface. So then, when you apply moisture to the paper, that invisible coating then will release that image, leaving it behind glued to the wood. If, however, you're able to pull any of that image back off the wood, that simply means that that part of the image was never glued in the first place. And so you're able to pull the paper off, leaving the image behind. But what happens if you pull the paper off and some of the image comes off the wood and stays on the paper? What does that tell you? What it should tell you is that that part of the image was never glued properly to the wood. There's no way that you can pull the image off if it's glued. So sometimes Folks will send me a photo, which is fine because that's what I need to see what your issues are. But they'll send me a photo and they'll say, hey, I'm having trouble. I pull the paper off and my image is spotty. It's missing parts. And you look at the paper and those parts are still on the paper. Well, how is it that the paper was able to pull the image off the wood so that it's still on the paper? That means there was nothing holding those parts onto the wood, because if the glue is holding it, it's going to hold it as you pull the paper away. The paper isn't going to be stronger than the glue. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, because understanding what glue does to paper or to even your image, by understanding that, when you have a problem transferring, you can then troubleshoot what the issues are. All right, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to go through what you need to do, the basics, okay? Number one, when you're first learning how to transfer, I suggest you start with small images. And the reason for that, and I'm going to go ahead and cut these out. The reason for starting with a small image is because you have less area that you have to glue. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Now I'm going to make a point, because sometimes people don't realize that the printing is done with laser printer. These are laser prints, not inkjet. Please do not use inkjet. All right? There are some ways of doing that, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. There's other videos that I have where you can do little tricks and get a somewhat decent transfer with inkjet, but this is laser printing. You need to have a laser printer or go down to a Kiko's or whatever you call those places and have them print it off for you. All right. So as you can see, the image itself, look at your image. Do you have any missing spots on your image? All right, you can see I don't have any missing spots on my image. That means if I glue this correctly onto here, then I should have no spots missing on my transfer if I had good glue coverage, good contact, which I'm going to show you with the brayer. Allow it to dry completely so there are not like areas that are not completely dry, because that will also come off. So anyway, here's what we're going to do. Again, my first tip, print a small image, a couple of them, so you can practice. Number two, get a bare piece of wood. Okay, that's an old transfer there. I'm going to use the back here. I hate wasting stuff. Okay, make sure it's nice and clean, nice and flat, doesn't have a bunch of, crevices or cracks, or it's wavy, or anything which can cause you to have bad contact. It doesn't mean you can't transfer to surfaces like that. It just means that if you end up with lines or you end up with spots missing, that's because you have bad contact. So a smooth, flat surface is great for practicing on to make sure that you've got good contact. All right, now my favorite adhesive is gel medium, but you can use any strong glue, anything that can glue paper onto wood will work. But I'm going to go ahead and use this gel medium. I'm going to get a sponge brush here just to get it initially applied. Now, it's very important that you add enough of your adhesive so that no areas end up drying before you apply the paper, but you don't want to use so much of it that you cause the paper to wrinkle, get soaked, and ooze out excessively. You want to avoid that. Now, in other videos that I have done, I will spray my paper with a clear coat such as this one right here, or I'll use a fast drying white paint and I will spray it from a distance because I don't want to soak the paper with the spray either. Whether it's glue or spray, don't get the paper soaked. And it provides a protection once it's clear. I could put the adhesive, like the gel, right on the image itself, and I don't have to worry about wrinkling the paper because it protects the paper from excessive glue. But in this case, I'm showing you the bare minimum, okay? So I'm going to apply the gel medium onto here with the brush first. Try to get good coverage. But then what I want to do is I'm going to use my finger just to make sure that I don't have any dry spots. All right? And dry means as well tacky. Okay, if it tacks up, it's already gone too far. It's too dry. All right? Now, I can feel with my fingers that everywhere is moist. That's what I want. I want it nice and moist, and I want to make sure I have good coverage. You may not realize it, you may not see it, but your finger could also wipe off parts of the adhesive, and you might think you got good coverage and you don't. All right? So be very careful that you're not scraping hard bits and causing areas to lose the adhesive. Okay, once you apply it, don't move it around so much unless you had pre-sprayed it with the clear. And now I'm going to try to find my plastic thing here. Get yourself some clear plastic or something you can put on top and get a brayer. Don't use a card or anything. Use a brayer. And you want to press it very well, because anywhere you don't have good contact, you risk not having the image glued. And that's key. It's gotta be glued. Okay? Now once I do that, just to prevent ooze out from getting on my brayer, then I'm going to take that off and just go directly on the paper itself. All right? Just like this. Okay? All right. And I don't have any air bubbles. I believe I have 100% coverage. All right. And now what you want to do is you want this to become 100% dry. If you're not sure, then leave it for a few hours. Okay. But on bare wood, where you don't have any varnish, you don't have any paint, you don't have any, coatings of any kind, it doesn't take long to dry because the moisture of the glue, the adhesive, gets sucked into the wood and evaporates really quickly. Whereas a painted or varnished or primered surface is going to take longer to dry because it has less places for moisture to escape. So try to keep that in mind, please, is that you may think it's dry, but it may not be dry if you don't give it enough time. So, err on the side of extra time if you're not sure. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Hippie Crafter heat gun, because that means I can get this thing dry in about 3 to 5 minutes. Now, if you're doing big images, and I'm advising you, don't do that up front. Do small images until you can see for yourself how really well the paper transfers. Then go to bigger images, but you'll have more area that you have to cover with the glue. You'll have more area that you have to make sure is 100% dry. There's just requires a little more of all these different factors if you want a 100% great large transfer. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and start to dry this. Okay, and then I'll restart the video when it's ready to go, so you don't have to watch me do that. All right, I think my camera's back on. So anyway, I've taken a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes to heat this up, and I think it's thoroughly dry. One other thing that I want to bring out that I haven't brought out before is that when you use a heating source to dry your transfer paper, let it cool down before you go for releasing. The reason why is because adhesive or paint or whatever, when it is still hot, is it can peel easily or come off the surface easily compared to something that's not heated. So let it cool down so that you can make sure that it sticks, it stays there. All right, so this feels nice and cool to the touch right now. Now, without adding moisture to this, I can get a corner of my paper here, and like any paper, any printer paper, you should not be able to pull this off. If it's glued, okay, it should be glued, right? And right now, if I pull on this, it's going to rip the paper. Okay, this should be glued on. If I'm able to peel this paper off right now, then that means that this thing is not glued properly. Okay, you should not be able to pull this paper off. All right, this is glued on paper, just like any paper. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to activate this paper. This is quick transfer paper. And description, the link where to get it is down in the description below. But this paper cannot come off like any other paper. It's just paper, all right? And I want to know that it's glued. Okay, so now that I know this is glued on, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a clean paper towel available here. And I'm going to take a wet sponge here in this case. And I'm just going to moisten the back. And this is going to activate this special paper. And what this does is it releases the coating that exists between the image and the paper. It releases this coating. So if the image is glued, the paper should be able to pull away from it. If you pull the image with the paper, the image was never glued to begin with. Remember that point. Some make the mistake of thinking, oh no, the paper doesn't work because I was able to pull parts of the image off. It's impossible. If it was glued, you can't pull it off. I just showed you, you can't pull the paper off. All right, now, with it moistened, all right, and hopefully I've moistened it enough, you want it to soak in. It does it rather quickly because I use a cotton bond paper, which really soaks that water in really good. Okay. You just dab off the excess, and now what we should be able to do is separate the paper from the image itself. And like butter, look at that. All right? Take a look at that. Okay? That is a 100% awesome transfer right there. Look at that. No missing spots. And here, let me show you the paper. Okay? Here's the paper. I'll show you both sides so you can see that I'm not hiding anything. But you see there is nothing left on the paper. It's because 100% of the image is glued to this surface. If there was any part of this image still on this paper, that means that that part of the image was never glued to begin with. I should not have been able to pull this paper out even with moisture. You can't pull a glued image off of the wood. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I gotta make sure everybody understands this very simple fact about gluing, is that you're still gluing the image. And so if the image is glued, you shouldn't have it still stuck on the paper. And if you do have it stuck on the paper, you need to figure out, why did I not have this glued onto here? Did I not glue it 100% coverage and I missed some spots? Did it end up drying in those spots before I put that on? Did I do a bad job of, brayering it? Contact. Maybe you thought you had done a good job there, but you had an air pocket or something there that you didn't press it down well and it didn't stick. Or there was missing glue, or it was still not dry. It was still moist, and so you end up just peeling this off because the glue was never dried in those areas. This is what it should look like if you did a perfectly good gluing job. The paper only has one function, okay, one function only, and that is to allow you to separate it from the image you print on it. Because with this paper, this transfer paper, let me go get the one here that has the image on it. The image is not printed on the paper itself. It's printed on the coating that is on the paper. And the moisture releases the coating that's behind the image. If you can pull the image off, okay, that's telling you that that image was never glued on here in the first place. Because the paper should never be able to pull off the image from here, and especially if it's lost its ability to separate. Okay, it just should never be able to come off. If the coating is bad, let's just assume that the coating is bad and all you ended up with is just standard regular printer paper. All right, think about this. You have regular paper, the coating's bad, there's no coating on here, you printed it on a regular paper, you glued it. If it was glued on, you wouldn't even be able to take the paper off. It would not come off, it's glued, all right? But this paper allows you to remove the paper backing from the image, all right? And I know I've said that like a dozen times already, but I've made a lot of videos and this question still comes up. And so I want to make sure that in this video that I can make it perfectly clear, all right? Now we're going to do another one. And here I have another thing here. Now, another thing you need to understand is anywhere there is white on the paper itself, anywhere there's white on the image itself, like, you know, this is kind of white, gray, white, whatever. Okay, anywhere you have very, very light color or you have white, then the background of whatever you're gluing to is going to show through those light or white areas. And the reason why is because the majority of our laser printers do not have white toner. There's no white toner. It's just the color of the paper you're looking at here. You're not looking at the toner. You can't glue the color of the paper onto here. That doesn't work. You're gluing only the colored image part. That's the only thing you're going to glue, and the rest of it's just going to be this bare wood color. All right, if I want to make the white look white on something that's obviously not white, this is not white. All right, this is kind of a tan or a light brown or a beige. I don't know all my colors. Okay, if I want this thing to be white and I want this to be black, or I want my colors to be like really, really vibrant and not dulled out because of the background, then what I can do is I can take the image, go out in my garage or outside and do a light coat of white spray paint. Now, I'm going to spray paint this just to show you the alternative way of doing this, but you have to remember, when you take your paint, pretend this is white paint, you must spray it lightly from at least, 15, 20, 25 inches away, so that when the spray hits the paper, it pretty much hits it and flash dries, all right? Don't get your image wet. If you get it wet, you may compromise the paper's ability to pull away from your substrate. All right, I'm going to turn the video off. I'm going to go to my garage and I'm going to lightly spray paint this. Now, you know what I'll do? I'll take the camera with me so you can just watch me do it. How's that? Sound good? All right, let's go. Okay, everybody, I am currently in my garage. What I've done is I just put the image inside of a cardboard box, just to kind of minimize the spray going all over the place. Now, here I'm using this Krylon rust protectant. It's a white paint. Basically, you just want something that's fastest dry, protective finish. Now, I had used a white paint in a different video, and it was an enamel. And I'll tell you what, that thing took forever to dry, and I was not too thrilled about that. So anyway, what you want to do, and I'm sorry I'm moving things around here, but I'm holding the camera with one hand. Okay, now you want to spray from a distance, so I'm going to be spraying a good 25 inches above here, and I'm just going to do a light spray initially to give it that initial protection. Okay, here we go. Okay, see how light that was, and it's from a distance. Okay, don't worry about getting full coverage right away. So far, you hardly see anything. Okay, but I want to get this to flash dry. Okay. And this is why I have a box, so that I can keep it from blowing away. Let me give it one more here. All right, that looks like it's good. Yeah, that's good coverage. I want to get away from the spray before it coats my lens. All right, and I'm going to go ahead now and bring this back into the studio, and we'll pick up from there. Okay, I'm back, and this feels like it's dry. Make sure it is, okay? You don't want it still tacky or anything. It should be thoroughly dry. And as you can see, I have a nice coating of white paint on my image. You don't want anything on this side, of course, the unprinted side. Otherwise the water won't go through the paper, which is what you're going to want to release it. But see, once you have a nice dry and you can feel it, you can tell, okay, this is good. We're ready to go. Now I'm going to show you, let me get rid of that, I don't need it anymore. What I'm going to show you here, let's see, give me a second, is that usually you put the glue or your gel medium or whatever you're using right on the substrate, but I'm going to do it on the actual image itself. And I can do this because it now has this protection. It has this white paint which is protecting the coating and the image. Otherwise, if I put the adhesive directly on here without this protection, I risk smearing the image because it starts to release the coating that's on the paper because of the moisture of the gel medium. And another nice thing about protecting your image with a spray is that you can use a lot more gel medium than you normally can because you don't actually risk wrinkling the paper because it's not getting all soaked because it won't soak through the paint. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and be real generous with all that gel medium there. Wipe my brush. And I'm going to brayer this on because now I know I got ooze out because I got way more gel medium than I need on here. Okay. Anyway, so let's go ahead and release the paper on this and see what we got going underneath here. Okay, so all we have to do is moisten it. And because I used paint, you want to be very careful because paint seems to have a tendency of wanting to peel off. It doesn't glue as well as paper does. So we'll just be very careful with this. Use a dry paper towel to take up the excess, and I'm going to give it a little wiggle to get it started here. Get it to release. Okay, it's got a little stickiness to it, so I'm going to go ahead and moisten it some more. Make sure that it does release. Okay, and I'll leave the excess on there this time as insurance. Yeah, there we go. So far, so good. Just real carefully, back and forth, back and forth. Okay. Nice and easy. And there we go. All right. Clean the edges up. I hope you could see that in my poor lighting here, but that was a 100% release. And as you can see the outline of the paint. See the round circle there? Look at that. Okay. And there you go. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. It's perfect. Okay, don't wiggle, camera. Just get in the light. Alright guys, so as you can see, whether we're going to paint it white, and you can see how it makes the colors really pop. All the background is white instead of the wood background here. Okay. That came out beautiful. Alright. Okay, well that's it for my tips in this video. I hope you like it. If so, please give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe, click the notification bell so you'll be informed of upcoming videos. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks again. Bye.